day to all the persons who are viewing, as well as my guest here, Mr. William Harvey. I am Aniona Jones, principal of the Marcus Garvey Technical High School here in St. Anne, Jamaica. As you can see from the background, we are celebrating 50 years as an educational institution, and we are proud to have as our motto, one God, one aim, one destiny, excellence. For a school that bears the name Marcus Garvey Technical High School, we are very proud of the fact that we have as our namesake, we are named in honor of our first national hero, the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And with me, I have a proud Garveyite. Mr. Harvey, tell me a little bit about how you got involved in becoming a Garveyite. How did that all start?
Approximately 50 years ago, I was walking down the street in Harvey, and I walked past a Garvey lodge, and there was a gentleman standing outside, and he said, sir, come over for a minute. So I stopped and I walked over, and he said, you busy? I said, not really. So he said, would you mind coming upstairs and sitting in on one of our Garvey meetings? So I said, well, why not? So I went upstairs with them, and I was really impressed with what they were saying about Africa and the black race. So I kept going back, and after a while, the gentleman who originally invited me up said, I have something that I would like to give to you. So I said, okay. So he said, here's this book about Marcus Garvey. And he said, you're going to be the next Marcus Garvey. And I looked at him and I was like, really? So when I took the book home, I opened it up and it said, property of Nkrumah, who was one of the best black nationalist presidents of Ghana. And my friend and Nkrumah went to college together. So before Nkrumah went back home, he gave my friend this book. So my friend gave the book to me. So I'm the next Marcus Garvey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's fascinating how a single moment in time can change the trajectory of your life.
Yes.
What if you had not crossed the road? What if you had not gone upstairs? What if you had not sat in that meeting?
Just that 1 second.
What about young people who are making these choices every day? You've been exposed to this philosophy of Marcus Garvey based on a choice at a moment in time.
Yes.
What message would you have for young people who are making choices every moment of every day?
The first thing I would probably say is listen to your conscience, and number two, be humble. Had I had an attitude like, what does this guy want? Now leave me alone, and kept going, I would have missed the boat. But because I humbled myself and said, why not? And it changed my life, just that one, why not? So I say to all of the young people, listen to your older people who have something to say that's important. You don't know everything. But when a person is older, like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and all the way up, they have an experience that you have not yet had. And if you listen to them, you can tap into their timeline and bypass a lot of nonsense.
If you listen to the older folks who have something important to say, you can tap into their timeline and benefit from their experiences.
That's correct.
How does a young person know who has something important to say? Because we're talking all the time. Social media, the telephones, we're interacting all the time. There's so much information coming at people. How can anyone watching this interaction between you and I, what would you say to them to help them to decipher, to discern? Who is this person? Do they really have something important to say? And is it worth my time?
Well, I'll have to go on the principle of judge not, lest I be judged. You don't know who that person is. You don't know what their experience in life is. You're only looking at a shell. When you hear that voice come out of that shell, stop for a second and just say, okay, let me listen. And if you just listen for a few minutes, something is going to come out of that voice that you're going to say, holy smokes, this person isn't as messed up as I thought because I'm judging them on how they look.
We buy books based on the cover. And the cover of this book, Black Moses, the story of Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association. We're looking at shells, we're looking at covers, and sometimes we miss all the wisdom on the inside. To any young person who is listening, I hope that you heard that. Don't just look at the outward appearance of a person. When somebody is speaking, actually try to understand what the person is saying, and then you can make a judgment call. But what about those persons who have already made judgment calls? They are not going to classes necessarily, they've chosen friends, they're born into a particular family, they feel as though this is where I am and this is what it is, and this is just my lot in life. What advice would you have for anyone, not just youngsters as teenagers, but even teachers who may be watching? When you feel you're at a place and you now feel this is my lot in life, how can someone navigate that space?
That's basically a hard river to cross. What we do as the new government of the first state of the United States of Africa, Jamaica, our job is to go and find those people who basically have given up. That's our job. We're like shepherds going to look for lost sheep. So you have a two-pronged sword. One is humble yourself and don't judge people when they say something to you. Listen. The second one is, if you made up your mind that this is it for me, I can't get any better than this, then it is upon those of us who know to come and find you.
We have youngsters right now who know nothing at all about Marcus Garvey.
Correct.
When they think about their reality, they hear about the Black Lives Matter movement. They think about colorism. If I'm lighter skinned, I have more opportunities. People judge me less harshly the lighter my skin is and based on my address.
Yes.
What have you learned personally as a black man in this journey called life?
Yes.
And having been exposed to the philosophy of Marcus Garvey and devised some of your own, what nuggets of wisdom can you share with persons as they navigate this space of being a young black person in the world today?
The first thing that hits my heart is not to embrace the traditions, the culture, the values of others prior to looking at yourself. We know that we are great people. We've come out of a great continent. We lost it all because of being knuckleheads. We just lost it all. Now we're all scattered all over the planet trying to figure out what to do. Garvey said, look towards your mother. Our mother is Mother Africa. And we have to understand something about the continent itself, the land. It gave birth to us. That's why we look the way we look. When you turn your back on your mother has something to say to you that's very important and critical. My parents used to say to me and others, I brought you in this world, I will take you out of here. And right now, because black people are not paying attention to Garveyism, and they don't care about Africa, there's something going on that we need to pay close attention to. Mother Africa is very pissed. And until we get it together, we're leaving here. Because Garvey said, if you don't want to join the industrialized nations of the world, if you don't want to stand up and eat at the table with the rest of the diners, die.
What does that mean for the now? A young teacher who is embracing this opportunity to raise up the next set of leaders in the world.
Yes.
And that's what teachers do. And I think sometimes we underestimate the power of our presence and the things that we say. And also a student of a school named Marcus Garvey.
Yes.
What would you recommend that they read, that they look for in the philosophy of Marcus Garvey that can guide them? Because I do believe that a lot of persons have never read his work for themselves. All they do is that they hear other people's interpretation. And most persons do not know that Marcus Garvey is known internationally as one of the greatest philosophers ever.
Correct.
He is up there with Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and all of these persons that we revere.
Yes.
But our very own that came from St. Anne's Bay.
Yes.
We don't regard his teachings. What would you have to say in terms of where would you think someone should look in their reading, in their personal search to understand why Garvey is regarded so highly across the world?
Well, the history of Garvey goes back way to the early 1900s. At that time, there was an organization called the Niagara Movement, headed by W.E.B. Du Bois. He was light-skinned. They had their talented tent, and they figured, we are going to leave the black race out of our condition, which was just slavery at that time, and bring them into prosperity. Okay, Marcus Garvey at the same time was telling black people, we need to reclaim Africa. Africa is the jewel of the world. We must take it back from foreign rule. Okay, Du Bois called him a black monkey, said he was ignorant. Garvey said, okay, you can keep that. And he kept his movement going, the biggest movement in the world as far as black people. Finally, Garvey gets deported from the United States on mail fraud and all that because he's having such a good effect on black people. Du Bois starts getting older, and he says, you know what, let me read this man's philosophy and opinions and see what this black guy is talking about. After he read the philosophy and opinions, he said, oh my God, the man's a genius, because white people are hanging black people at that time, literally in the streets of New York. So after a while, Du Bois is getting even older. So he goes to China. China's on the rise. Mao Zedong is doing it. He goes to China and he brings a copy of the philosophy and opinions to Mao Zedong. Here, read this. Mao Zedong read the philosophy and opinions and said, Africa for the Africans, China for the Chinese. Those at home and those abroad. Up, you mighty race. You can accomplish what you will, but if you don't have a will, you can't accomplish anything. That was the most important words that Marcus Garvey said. You can accomplish what you will. Our will has been broken.
I agree. I do not think that most of us know what we want. As a school leader, I remember having several conversations with persons. What do you want? What would make you feel successful? What does success mean to you? And most persons struggle to answer the question. And I realized that it was a question I needed to ask myself. Mrs. Jones, what do you want?
Personally.
Because if you have a goal, and your goal is so big, you don't get easily distracted. You let some things go because you're on a mission.
That's right.
What do you think a school named Marcus Garvey Technical High School should have as its mission?
To me right now, because that new space telescope just went up to replace the Hubble, dream big. Every time I look at those NASA films and you see all of these technicians in all white, you notice they never show you what they look like. I'll bet you there's not one black person involved in putting those telescopes together to go up into space. We have got to start thinking big. This small stuff is not going to get it anymore. We have got Jamaica. Why can't Jamaica send up spacecraft like everybody else? Why can't Jamaica manufacture vaccines? Jamaica has got to be the forerunner of all of the other Caribbean islands, all of the other African nations, to take control of technology and run past everyone else the same way Usain Bolt runs past everyone on the track field.
I think we have limited ourselves to sports, music, tourism. I think we have really limited ourselves. And when I talk to young people, most persons just want to have a job. They just want to own a little business so that they can pay their basic bills.
Yes.
I like where you're starting. Dream big. Look at technology. But technology requires math.
That's correct.
Technology requires the ability to communicate.
Yes.
In different languages, including English, and also different technological languages such as the computer.
Correct.
But many of our children hate math. And they only want to use the computer for games, and they think that they are bad at math. And they can't learn math. Why do you think that that would be something that so many black people fear math? and fear English, and the boys don't want to speak well, and that is for them and this is for us. Why do you think that is?
I think it comes from leadership. To me, I'm a military man. I came out of the United States Marine Corps back in the day during the Vietnam War. And I realized that had I not joined the Marines in 1966, I will not be sitting here talking to you now, because heroin was the scourge of New York City,
yes,
killing everybody. So after I came out of the Marine Corps, I had to accept the fact that they made men out of you. This government, all governments, have to take the young men and women now and bring them into an environment where they have structure, discipline, food, a uniform, class, a paycheck, health insurance. They can't get that out here in the street. We look at North Korea. When you watch them march, you go, oh my God. All those people moving as one. They have a military government. China, military. Russia, military. The United States doesn't draft anymore, they used to. They need to bring that back. Jamaica needs to make it a policy. Every youth in Jamaica will serve at least 2 years in the JDF. We've got to bring our children into the fold.
But parents don't even want us to tell the boys to cut their hair. And the hair is not learning. And why do they need to wear these kinds of shoes? And those things have nothing to do with learning. And I disagree that it has nothing to do with learning. Because I agree with you, the first thing we need to learn is how to be disciplined.
Yes.
And if you are disciplined, then you're disciplined enough to learn math.
Yes.
You're disciplined enough to keep fighting, keep pushing,
yes,
do without sleep, do without food, do without the television, do without a stupid conversation on your phone, because you have a greater goal.
That's correct.
If it is, what do we say to the parents who do not believe that their young boys should be told no tight pants? They have to cut their hair. They have to sit this way, young ladies. You must speak this way. What do we say to parents who are fighting against the discipline in schools?
The parents, I speak to them all the time. I tell them, listen, if you don't get your son and your daughter into a situation where they can be received great guidance and support, if they need support, the chances of your child surviving past 18 all the way up into the early 30s is not very good, because the homicide rate within our class of people is exceptionally high, much higher than white police killing unarmed black men. So I tell the parents, listen, if the government says you must do 2 years in the military minimum, then you can go on about your business. Encourage your child to go in. And if your child tells you, well, I might get killed overseas, no, the odds of you getting killed right here in Jamaica are much higher than you getting killed in Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever. So don't use that excuse to allow your child to hide underneath your bed because they're too afraid, too timid to get out there and face the world. That's why the government is so important.
I believe leadership matters.
Yes.
And I believe that because leadership matters, we must be very, very careful about the selection of governments that set policy. In a school setting, what policies do you think that we should be looking at for the next 50 years to guide our school forward? If there were 3 things that as a school we should focus on for the next 50 years, as you reflect on your own life, your own journey, the teachings of Marcus Garvey,
Yes.
what 3 things should we be thinking about as a school?
Okay. As a school, I would say, I wouldn't put them in this order, but I would say the first thing is this. Connect your brain to your hand. The Chinese are masters of it now. Make things. When I came into the school, I didn't see a section where there was a machine shop and a wood shop and a plastic shop where you make molds and all that. This is a technical school. They must use technology. Every time a child leaves this school and goes home, they've got to bring something home that they made. We don't make anything anymore. The Chinese make it all. So that's number 1, make things. Number 2, Use your skills as a technocrat with these iPhones and all these computers. Once you jump on it, you are masters. I have seen children who are 2 years old do things with a phone that I don't know how to do. And so when you give them these gadgets, let the minds run with them and explore how they can make it better. Give just one quick example. Tesla has the electric car out.
Yes.
Okay. It's great, but there's a major problem. The batteries explode and will kill you. So they're trying to figure out how do we make batteries that won't explode. That's a project for Marcus Garvey Tech. Find a way to make batteries that won't explode, and you will make Jamaica the #1 exporter of batteries on the planet. Number 3, Africa is where all of the lithium, cobalt, coltan, and all that other stuff is used to make batteries. It's the best in the world, best quality. Reconnect with your African brothers on the continent and say, listen, those people over there are ripping you off. The government's ripping you off, and so are the people who buy what you dig up out the ground. From now on, all business is conducted in Jamaica. If you want to buy our coltan and cobalt, fly into Kingston and see our representatives. You don't talk to us anymore. If we don't connect with those brothers and sisters in the continent, we're all done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harvey. Coming out of this conversation, I know that I have been empowered to, when someone says something, reduce the judgment, open my ears and open my heart to understand where the person is coming from. Then I will make a judgment call. If I connect with persons who've walked this journey before, then I can tap into their experience and be so guided.
Yes.
But they must have something important to say. Not just complain, but something important to say, some direction.
Yes.
I've also learned that I need to be more familiar with this philosophy of discovering Black worth and Black value and the genesis of us as a people.
Yes.
And it's not just when we were first discovered. We connect with the motherland, or a mother has something to say.
Yes.
I've also come to recognize that the 3 things that we definitely need to do, we must make things. At this school, we do have 13 skill areas that I really believe have not yet discovered their true potential. We're learning what other people did, but we're not creating new things. But we must be willing to make mistakes if we're going to discover something new. I agree with you that discipline is incredibly important, and we must think about disciplining young people. And I hope for all the persons who are watching that you have come to recognize that as well. We must connect with Africa, and we must connect with technology. Space is the new frontier. Technology is the new frontier. And for those of us who can make things, that's where the new marketplace is. We have to stop trying to earn money to buy. We must earn money to make things that other people can buy. Thank you so much for being here.
And I thank you for inviting me.
No problem.
All right.
Thanks so much to Mr. William Harvey, ex-military personnel, Garveyan, and definitely a friend of the Marcus Garvey Technical High School. I am Annie Jones, principal here, and it has been my pleasure